Hi, welcome to Story Time. I'm Mrs. Kopeski, and I have Show and Tell by Elvira Woodruff, illustrated by Denise Brunkus. This is a very special book because on the title page, the author signed it for my son. Andy never had anything good for show and tell. Daniel always had something big. Megan always had something fancy. Peter always had something scary. And Emma usually had something hairy. But Andy never seemed to have anything interesting at all. Once he brought in a paper clip that no one wanted to look at. Another time he brought in a shoelace that he found. It looked so old, Andy thought it might be the oldest shoelace in the world. No one else seemed to think so. When Andy brought in his favorite fork, the one with the bent handle, even Mrs. Applelarney yawned. Emma O'Letty just shook her head. You have the worst show and tells in the whole class, maybe even in the whole school, she told him. Then one day on the way to school, Andy saw something interesting poking out of the grass. I wonder what it is. What do you think it might be? He reached down and picked up a blue bottle with a picture of a boy blowing bubbles on it. The words underneath the picture said, "Caution, bubbles may cause trouble." Andy couldn't read the words, but they had a lot of letters, and he liked that. This was be perfect for show and tell, he thought. He put the bottle in his own book bag. Andy was first picked for the show and tell. He proudly held up his blue bottle. It's probably the oldest bottle of bubbles in the world, he told the class. It's probably so old that the bubbles won't even work, Emma O'Letty said with a great, glorious bubbles floated down from the ceiling. It bounced off the bulletin board before landing on Mrs. Applelarney's head. Then something strange happened, and Andy and the rest of the class looked on as Mrs. Applelarney began to shrink and shrink and shrink until finally she was no bigger than a bubble herself. Oh dear, suddenly I feel so light, she gasped, floating head above her desk. Everyone's eyes were back on Andy. He dipped his bubbles back into the bottle. This time he blew 2 more bubbles. They came bouncing down the aisle, finally cozying up to the Cooper twins. Everyone watched as Brian and Bradley Cooper turned into 2 little bubbly boys. Eee! They squealed with delight, floating hand over the hamster cage. A memorable storytelling, Andy said. Mrs. Applelarney also commented, flying above the blackboard. Andy continued to blow bubbles from the oldest bottle until the classmates were bouncing around. Finally, Andy blew himself. Catching the breeze, he followed Mrs. Applelarney and the rest of the class out the window. Once in the open air, the bubbly kindergarten class blew all the way to Andy's house. If you look way down there, Andy proudly told them, there's my sandbox. Just then, a big gust of wind blew everybody higher into the sky. Fine day for a field trip, I suppose, Mrs. Applelarney said, trying to sound composed. If you look way down there, you might be able to see my puppy, though. He's kind of small, Andy sputtered as the family of crows flew above. And if you look straight ahead, you'll be able to see an airplane, a very, very big airplane, Andy gasped. It was true, a big jet plane zooming straight at them. When the pilot saw the bubbly group, he quickly steered below them. Looks like rain, Andy said. A big gray cloud lightly grazed over their heads. Does anybody know what kind of rain clouds they are? What are rain clouds called? Suddenly, drops of rain began to fall. Bubbles began to pop, and everyone tumbled down, down, down to the sandbox behind Andy's house. That's all the time we have for show and tell, Mrs. Applelarney said, shaking out the sand out of her hair. On the way back to the classroom, Andy overheard Emma Oletti say, "I think Andy has the best show and tell in the class, maybe in the whole school. I wonder what he'll bring next." Andy frowned. He used up all his magic bubbles, and he didn't know what to bring for show and tell next time. Suddenly, Mrs. Applelarney called him to the front of the line. "That certainly was an interesting show and tell, Andrew," she said, pulling a feather out of her hair. Andy shook his head and blushed with delight. "But you know," she said, "next time I prefer to see your fork again, if that's all right with you." And that's the end. I had a lot of fun on our family walk today. My grandson loves walking in the parkway. Can you tell what some of the things we spied on our walk? There are 2 different types of flowers and 2 different types of birds. Please comment below and I will tell you if you are right. Also in the story, I asked you what rain clouds are called. Please comment on that also. Good night, sweet dreams, and enjoy some wonderful books in the morning.